Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy Nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. I'm Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and today we're joined by Kristina Driscoll, fellow podcaster. Kristina, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Absolutely, Jennifer. It's great to be here.
So tell me all about you and why you do what you do.
Yeah, so I actually, you don't know this about me, but I was a financial advisor until I was 35. And then I became a stay-at-home mom because my husband was quite a bit older than I was. It took us about 4 years to have a child. And by then I just wanted to be a mom for a while. But actually, as we know, life throws a lot of curveballs at us. So when our son was 5, my husband developed early onset Alzheimer's. So that was a 12-year journey. And people used to say to me, "Oh, you're so brave. You're so resilient. You're so authentic. You don't care what people think." But I didn't start out that way, Jennifer. And that was really something that I had to develop over time. And I also wanted to say to you, I love what you're doing as far as doing educational workshops for women, because I had to take over managing our money because my husband had Alzheimer's. And had I not been in the financial industry, who knows what would have happened. I think that we all, as women, need to have at least some basic knowledge of managing our finances. And it's just, I'm like you, I'm a huge believer in just educating yourself. Even if you think you hate it, even just taking, just take one class, sign up with Jennifer or somebody, and you'll find it's not as scary as you thought it was. And even if you have just some basic knowledge, it'll go a long way.
Thank you so much for saying that. I feel like from my perspective, just in my own journey, right, to helping my, grandma navigate and kind of going through, it's a foreign language. Unless you are living in it and you're deep in it, there's a lot of terminology that people are like, "Oh, I don't know what that means." And a lot of women I find that are like, "Oh, I don't want to ask any questions that could be deemed as silly questions." Ask the questions, because I feel like when it comes to, your financial responsibility, embrace it. Financial literacy is out more now than it was, 10, 20 years ago, by all means, but it can still be overwhelming. And I definitely see, just being on the other side of the chair, like with my grandma, I can see how it can be definitely overwhelming. But that's why I do what I do, to be able to educate and get that out there. And I think that's so important. Another thing too, like you had said, when couples come in, sometimes it's only one person that's coming in. And I always encourage, I want both folks to be in a partnership. So both folks, Lord forbid, if something happens to one of them, the other one knows what's going on, knows the plan, and is, engaged in that too. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. So to continue, and why I'm doing the podcast and how that came about is my husband did pass away a couple years ago.
So sorry.
2.5 years ago. Thank you. But life goes on, and I got remarried recently, and my son graduated from high school, and, I had really embraced that 12-year caregiving journey, just trying to be there as much as possible, be there 100% for my husband on his journey, and also be there for my son while he was growing up. And I literally found myself last September, Jennifer, I found myself with this very unsettled feeling. And I know we've all had those times in our life where we feel really unsettled and we don't know why. And the reason why we feel unsettled is that we know that we're meant for more, but we're too afraid to take that step. So I just kind of spent a lot of time in introspection around August. I also had COVID on my honeymoon. So that I think God was kind of forcing me to
Oh,
be introspective. It's like if you're not going to sit down and be introspective and figure out how you're going to serve humanity, for the next hopefully 50 years of your life, then I'm going to give you COVID so you can sit down and be introspective that way. It doesn't that crack you up? Anyway, during that time, it just came to me that I had a voice and my voice needed to be heard. And so many women were always saying to me that, oh, you're so brave and I'm not. And I didn't start out that way at all. You're so authentic. You don't care what other people think, but I don't know how to live that way. So I signed up for a podcast class. I went through all the exercises, and one of them was to reach out to a bunch of people and find out what are my strengths. And they all came back with the same thing. They all said, you're really brave. You're really authentic. You don't care what other people think about you. Just live your life, what you do, what's best for you. And you're really resilient. And that's how She's Brave was born, because I interview women from all over the world, finding out how they got through something really difficult. And they didn't all start out brave, myself included. But I think that as women, we need to get our voices out there more. And we have to know that the bravery is within us. And that even really ties back to you, Jennifer, because again, like I think so many women believe, well, I'm not smart enough. I'm not smart enough to learn anything about finance. But I think if they just take that one brave step, which is what I did, took one brave step to take a podcasting class. I didn't know where it was going to lead. I thought maybe it's going to lead nowhere. I was so scared when I started, but I did it. And the same thing with you. If they sign up for your class, or they sign up for a class wherever they're at, and they just take that one brave step, they will find out that finance isn't nearly that scary. Because you and I feel just as strongly as you do about women and finance. And this ties in really well to She's Brave. And you're going to be coming on my podcast as well, talking about women taking charge of their finances.
and I want to, just throw this out. Like, I think what you're doing is fantastic. And I think that there's definitely a community of people that should share their stories about bravery to, if anything, inspire others. Because I think everyone has gone through something in their lives where they've had to try to navigate. But listening to your podcast, it almost gives you that community sense that there's others out there like you going through something, and maybe a different something, but it's similar of trying to, put one foot in front of the other and navigate and just keep moving.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
So on this podcast, we also like to talk about money memories. What's a money memory that you had from childhood or a younger year that helped mold your relationship to money as an adult?
Yeah, I know you gave me this question before, and it really brought up interesting things in myself. And there's a very strong memory I have. I grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia, but I had a lot of relatives in the Seattle area, which is where I now live. And we were down visiting the Seattle cousins, and we were down at the Seattle waterfront, and there was an ice cream place, and they used one of those tiny sugar cones, the really small ones, and they'd put a big ball right on top, which was not, ideal, right? Because you start thinking it can fall off. Well, I was probably 7 years old, was with my cousins, and I got my ice cream, and within 1 minute or 2 minutes, I licked it and it fell off onto the sidewalk, plop. And we were, literally 1 block away from the ice cream shop. And my parents were like, oh, well, that's just too bad. And all my cousins were eating their ice cream, and I just didn't get any. And my one cousin, who's like a sister to me, remembers that memory. And as adults, she brought it up one time, and she said, I don't think that was the right thing for your parents to do. I think they should have gone back and gotten you another ice cream cone. And so what I'm saying, Jennifer, is that her mother was Depression era, and my mother was super, and still is, very, very careful with money, doesn't like to spend money, never really indulged me with hardly any gifts. And my father grew up in World War II. That's a whole other story. So again, he was just, they had this consciousness of, we cannot spend money. And so by the time I was 12, I got a paper route in Vancouver, British Columbia. It was an evening paper. And so after school, I would deliver the paper. And from the age 12 on, true story, I bought all my own clothes, all my own shoes, all my own makeup, anything that I wanted, like that was just considered not essential. I paid for it myself. And, there is some value in that, obviously, but I have to say I've raised my son pretty differently because the message that I got, Jennifer, was that I'm not valuable. I'm not worth it. And so I went into adulthood with a serious confidence issue and lack.
Wow. And you had shared earlier, really self-esteem tying into a relationship with money as well. Would you mind sharing a little bit more on that? Because I think that's spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say like in high school, I was that super shy, quiet girl. I think if you were to go, if you were to go back to my high school, I think people would be like, who? I did go to a really huge high school too, but I think I ended up marrying a man who was very controlling. But then once I got out of college, I got a business degree and I got a good job. And I realized, I don't need to be married to this person who is criticizing me and controlling me all day long. I'm miserable. So I left the marriage and I went into therapy for the first time in my life. And I've been in therapy off and on since then. And the first question I really asked her is like, why did I choose this person? And how can I not make this mistake again? And I didn't. I have not. I got very good at looking at for the red flags, but I also started working on my self-esteem. And that meant a lot of self-help books, just really, really working on that. I mean, I was a person, Jennifer, who, if I walked into a really fancy restaurant, even when I was working on myself in my mid 20s, I would feel uncomfortable. I felt like I didn't belong there. But I also learned that that wasn't okay, that I should be able to, I'm a human. I should be comfortable anywhere I go. It doesn't matter how much money other people around me have, whether I should still be comfortable in my own skin and have confidence. And so I worked really hard on that all throughout my 20s. And in my early 30s, on a hike on Mount Rainier, I met my late husband, or I met across the trail. 6 months later, we were married. He was a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch. And, it's just interesting when you work on your inner self, and in this case, my confidence, that it was just amazing how much my life completely transformed. I went from living from paycheck to paycheck. Even though I was working in finance, I wasn't making a ton of money. And I did own a home, but I was sort of squeaking by, to having like a much more comfortable lifestyle, marrying my husband. And we just knew it. I mean, our eyes met. 6 months later, we were married. No one ever questioned us. No one. I never had once somebody say to me, he's too old for you, or someone say to him, she's too young for you, because we emanated confidence and radiance that we were soulmates. We really were.
Oh, I love that story so much. I love that, because I think when you know.
I agree.
Oh, I have a similar story. Met my husband. We were engaged in 2 months and married 4 months after that. So
wait, you got married when?
So we've been married 9 years now. But we met on a blind date, and that neither one of us wanted to go on. And we chuckle about that now, but we're engaged 2 months after we met, and then married 4 months after that.
What? Okay, so that's identical to us. We were engaged 2 months later and married 6 months, and never looked back.
No, and it's been a fantastic, lovely journey along the way, right? So, and I feel like when you hear these stories, like when you know, and I think that's what you're sharing as well.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that and being so raw and vulnerable on that. Would you mind sharing more about just kind of what led you into the world of finance and how you ended up becoming a financial advisor? And then I know you'd said that you wanted to raise your little one, and that's a full-time job in itself by all means, but maybe some of the key points of like how you navigated into finance and some of the learning points that you had that you can share with others just on the financial literacy point.
Yeah, I started college and I wanted to be a school teacher. And luckily that first year, I wanted to be a high school teacher, actually grade 12 English. And I got into the classroom with two different teachers, and they said, please don't go into teaching. It's not the best. So I literally went to, the advisory center at my college and took a battery of tests, and it came back with business. And so I decided to get a degree in business, but I had a bit of a detour when I married my first husband, my college sweetheart, who was kind of controlling one. Because we lived in a small town and there wasn't really much other than state government. So I worked for state government for 5 years. It was solid. I made good money, but I always had a passion for finance. And that came from my dad. My dad, when I was a child, he would get all these, back before email, he would get letters in the mail from mutual fund companies. And my dad, it was a hobby for him. He was a chemical engineer, but he loved finance. So he was always, really in that world. And so as a child, I started asking him questions. What does this prudential envelope mean? Why do you get so many of these? And I just knew that I wanted to be in finance. And with all that self-development work that I did after I got divorced in my 20s, it really came to me, what are you waiting for? You need to work in finance. And so I got a job with Frank Russell Company, the Russell 2000, and I was an analyst for a few years. And then I became a financial advisor, and I did that with AG Edwards, which no longer exists because they were bought out by somebody. But I just always had, I think in that way, my parents were really great. Like they said, don't rely on anyone else. You have to only, because even if your husband loves you dearly, he could die in a car accident. And so do you want to be stuck in that position where you don't know anything about finances and, or you don't have some kind of education and a good job? Like you have to protect yourself. And I think that was some of the best advice that they gave me.
Yeah, that's solid. Oh, I have a tiny one. Who she's not so tiny anymore. She's in her early teens, but we've always taught her since she was little, a man is not your financial plan, right? Like I want you to carve your own way, figure it out. And I feel like that should be on a t-shirt as well. A man is not your financial plan, but like truly like navigate that through and whoever your partner is, whether female, male, whatever. But really carve that out and take that responsibility yourself and own it. Educate yourself and own it. And I think that goes hand in hand with like self-help is what you were sharing.
Yeah. And the self-help, like all that, the therapy and the books, it helped me to say, I don't want a career in state government. I want a career in finance. That's my passion. And, but it was obviously it's super scary to take a big move like that, to make that leap, but you just have to do it. You have to do it.
Yeah. And I'm sure along your journey from finance and just your journey in life, another thing we talk about on the podcast is financial infidelities. Whether it's something that you've experienced or something that you've seen, what's something that you're open to sharing that you think folks could learn from?
Yeah, well, I would say looking back is, in my husband's 12-year Alzheimer's journey, it got really, really hard, obviously. And he did have to go under care. He was under care for 7 years, and he was wandering around at night. He hit his head. The doctor said, you have to put him under care. And because he was combative with caregivers in the home, with me. And so, one of the ways that, you look for ways to cope. And obviously you have, I had amazing mom friends, and I did have some good support. But I think one of the ways that I coped was I would go to Nordstrom here in the Seattle area because, everything's perfect at Nordstrom. Right? And you buy something really pretty and then you're happy for a while, but then it wears off, right? You can buy something that you love, clothes, shoes, jewelry. It's all your favorite stuff, but inevitably you always get tired of it after a few years. It doesn't matter. Even if it's a really expensive ring, I'm sorry, but usually you do get kind of tired of it after a few years. So I feel like I had a bit of a shopping addiction for a while because I could go to Nordstrom and everything was perfect and everything was okay. And at home, everything wasn't perfect and everything wasn't okay. And I could go to Nordstrom and they were so nice to me and I could feel good for a little while. But I also realized this isn't really healthy. And this only gives me a very short-term happiness. And so for me, what I learned is number one, like buy less expensive stuff. because those clothes that you love, whether you buy them really expensive clothes, you're still going to get tired of them after a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. You can find something just as nice. Honestly, I guess I'm not a big believer in designer clothes. That's just me. Some people swear by it. They think it's great, whatever. I'm like, it's not worth it. It's not. I would rather just buy something less expensive. And then when I get tired of it, I'm not feeling so guilty, but I spent so much money on this article of clothing. And same thing with jewelry, can people really tell whether you have a real or fake something? Like, you want a ring, you know what? Then after 3 years, you're tired of it. What are you going to do? If you have a really inexpensive ring, you don't feel so bad. You can gift it, or you can give it to the Goodwill. And so, yeah.
No, I think that's a good one too. When it comes to shopping, I feel like sometimes that can create an escapism for folks, right? Because you're changing your environment sometimes, right? With Nordstrom's, I think of like chandeliers, the big piano where somebody's playing many times. Like, they got the little, coffee smoothie bar outside that you're like, it's full immersive experience, right? To put you in that shopping mode. And especially if things are going on in your life, like, gosh, they were hugely for you. To have that moment of just kind of a bliss or an escapism, I imagine that was just priceless for you at the time.
It was, but I think that you can also get a similar feeling by shopping at less expensive places, if that makes sense. I mean, even that would have been a better choice. Like, okay, well, I can't stop, or I just really want to shop, but maybe I can buy things that are less expensive and I can still have that great feeling. Oh, I got a new shirt, but instead of it being $100, maybe it was $20. That's significant, right?
Yeah. And I feel like this is where the whole movement that's happening now too, to go slightly off topic, with the whole consignment world, or the whole used clothes, purpose clothes, it's like, it's a big deal now. And I like that. That's kind of my guilty pleasure, like ThredUp, which is an online, shopping community. Like, everything, if you know your size and you know your brand and you know what fits on your body, then you can buy it for $5. And I always tease, I'm $5 shirt girl, right? I want a $300 shirt, but I want it for $5 and I want it with a coupon.
Exactly. I think you can get that same excited feeling for having a new shirt. Maybe somebody else wore it a few times. Who cares? And so there are ways to work around these things.
Yeah. And it goes back to, I think, just, can you afford to go out and buy blah, blah, that shirt, those shoes, whatever? Sure. Or maybe not, but sure. But do I choose to do that? No, because I want it for $5 with a coupon, because that is truly like, that is how I was brought up. That's how I was raised in my mentality. But I like super nice things, but I like them for $5.
Here's the other thing. I just got back from a month-long trip to Asia. Never been to Asia. Cambodia was amazing. It changed my life. I was in 4 different countries, but Cambodia is very, very poor, but they're considered the friendliest people in the world. And, I literally gave some of my jewelry away, some of my more expensive jewelry, to people who needed it. And that's kind of a whole nother, episode and story. But I would rather buy that $5 t-shirt because there's a lot of people in the world that I want to help. And that's the truth too. So, you can take that difference and make a difference in the world. Like, make a difference in somebody's life. Why not? That's my attitude now. I'm not going to be spending a ton of money on expensive things. I would rather be able to donate more. And I have lived that way. I actually am on the board of directors of an animal rescue in Oregon, on a farm. And I built actually an FIV positive cat shelter, because again, so many of us wait till we die. We say, okay, well, I'm going to donate, this amount of money to this cause when I die. And I'm saying, I want to do it while I'm alive. I'd rather do it right now. I'd rather see the benefits and the ripple effects of what I can do now for people.
I love that. I mean, that goes right into kind of my next question as we wrap things up. Like, what are tips or tricks that you use to utilize money differently in your household? And that's exactly one of them. Donating so you can see the joy of that now and the impact of that now. That's beautiful.
It is. Yeah. I would say my biggest hack is, I think I still have the shopping tendency. I will admit this, Jennifer. About 2 weeks ago, I just, for some reason, I think I needed to go to Target, or I thought I needed to go to Target. I probably haven't been to Target in 2 years, but I went into Target to get one thing and came out with 10 or 15 or whatever. So my hack is, believe it or not, I buy almost everything on Amazon Prime because I'm a Prime member. I don't have to pay for shipping. It's approximately the same price. If it's a tiny bit more, I feel like I'm still saving, because for me, let's just say the other day, I bought 3 eyeshadows from Ulta because they have an eyeshadow that I love. And I stock up on it. I get the free shipping. Now, if I were to go to the Ulta store, I'm telling you, Jennifer, I would spend probably $200-$300. And for me, who loves to shop, this is my biggest hack for all your listeners out there who are, and men are guilty of it too. You know, they just do it with electronics. Stay away from the stores. Stay away.
It's sensory overload, right? You go in and everything's shiny and glittery and pretty. And then you're like, oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. Look at this. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think the other one big hack that my husband and I had is we moved to a small town just outside of Seattle. It's not like we're really far. We're like, 15 minutes from Bellevue, whatever. But, during COVID, of course, everybody was eating in. And I feel like I should probably be a representative for Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's, go get something really nice there. It's not super expensive, but you can get almost like pre-made meals, things that you just stick in the oven. And, the rice is already pre-made in the freezer. You just heat it up. And then you put the orange chicken in the oven for 15 minutes and you've got a Chinese dinner. And that is so much less expensive than going to a restaurant here in Seattle. If my husband and I go out and just get an entree and just get a glass of wine, 2 people, $100.
Easy. Yeah.
Easy. So, we're spending under 20, and we just kind of decided to keep that. We go out to dinner once a week. And if I'm tired of cooking, I buy some pre-made stuff. People say, well, pre-made stuff is really expensive. Guess what? Eating out is like 3 times the cost of the pre-made stuff. So that's my other big hack.
Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you again for spending some time with us too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer.
I hope everyone listening or joining us will join us again on our next Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.